All right, Melissa, do you think that's time to get started?
Yeah, I think we seem like we're good to go. We've slowed down on entries, so.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, everyone, again, welcome. My name is Alex Ramsvik. I'm the high school principal. It's wonderful to have you all here. Just a couple bookkeeping things right off the top for those of you who haven't been in any of our sessions yet this evening. And for those of you who have been in a couple or maybe all three already, thank you for sticking with us. So first of all, this is being recorded. So this will be made available to our community afterwards. If you have questions, please feel free just to drop them in the chat. We have a whole team of people who might be able to answer simple questions on the go, and otherwise Melissa will ask me as we go or at the very end. And if you have a question that you would prefer to wait, you can definitely feel free to email me or call me, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. All right, so a few welcomes and introductions. I'm just so happy that we are where we are. Obviously, this is not quite as perfect of a start of the year as we could imagine when we left school at the end of last year. But having said that, this time this year feels much more relaxed and confident than I think we felt this time last year. So although there's uncertainty, although there's we don't know exactly how the year is going to unplay, I feel really confident in our team. I feel confident in our processes, and most importantly, our ability to adapt. So I'm looking forward to the presentation tonight. So in terms of agenda, we're going to talk about the program itself, what it's going to look like this year, talk about our impact programs and some changes there, talk about clubs and activities and WHOIs, talk about athletics briefly, and I think John Fraser, our athletics director, is here if there are specific questions. Talk about communication, the best way to communicate and receive communication from the high school. And then self-screening, our sick policy, COVID response, travel policy, and then upcoming events. So how will our year work this year? So Melissa, if you wanted to move to the next slide. So for those of you who are brand new, we have two different curriculums in the high school. We have the middle years program for grades 9 and 10, and we have the diploma programs in grade 11 and 12. And what I said to the faculty this week, and I'll say to you right now, just briefly before I get into any sort of changes or things you should know about these programs, is a few things I believe and a few things that I know. So some things that I believe about our high school. Number one, I believe that our high school is elite in the world. I believe that it is one of the very best high schools in the entire world. And I have reasons to believe that I'll explain in a second. So one of those reasons is our curriculum. But more importantly, I think that the number one reason, the way that I know that our high school is elite and one of the best in the whole world is the kind of students that graduate from our school. So I'm really privileged in my job. This is my fourth year here as going into my third year as principal, and I finished 4 years here at Le Jardin. But one of the privileges of my job is getting to meet with our seniors, spend a lot of time with our seniors, and then our alums as well as they move past. And something that I just know is a fact is that our school helps make really wonderful people. Another reason I know our high school is elite in the world and what makes it so special is the kind of results that we get. For those of you who don't know our DP or diploma program results this past year, and even one step further back, how that works is at the end of our diploma program, students write exams across all of their different subject areas. These exams are moderated and graded worldwide by examiners from other IB schools. And we've been working on this program for 11 or 12 years now. I think it's been incredibly successful, but this past year, I think a lot of things really came together, and our pass rate, the number of students who took all the DP requirements and earned the DP, the actual diploma, was actually 91%. So in previous years, we've been in between about 65 and maybe 75%. And this past year was 91% pass rate. And I'm incredibly proud of that. And I think there's lots of factors that play into that. But I think it is one of the indicators that we're doing a really good job. This next year, that result might change, but I think it does suggest that the things that we're doing are working. So of the 60 or so students we had in a class last year, 61, 91% of them earned that IB diploma, which is outstanding. Another indicator for me of why our high school is elite, is the kinds of colleges our students have been getting into in recent years. If you come to the college counseling office, room 407A, second floor of the high school, Scott Litke and Lindsay Schiffler's room, you can see all the banners up. And this past year was a banner year, to coin a phrase. We had students in elite colleges around the country. But more importantly, we did a survey asking these students how they felt about where they got in, and overwhelmingly they were incredibly satisfied. So what I've interpreted that to mean is we got them into the colleges they wanted to go. We have about 100% of our students have the opportunity to go to a four-year college. They all apply and get in, and then every year one or two will decide to do a gap year, or one student's doing a service year with his church this year. But our students have outstanding options and opportunities. So I'm proud of that. So returning back to how the curriculum is going to work this year, again, we have the middle years program and our DP program, and they work hand in glove, one leading into the other. We have two people on this call right now who are integral to that. Rachel Dominic, if you were in the middle school presentation, she was in there, and she's in here now too. She's our MYP coordinator. I think she just turned her camera on so you can see her there. And we also have Lindsay Schiffler, who's our high school dean of academics, and also our DP coordinator. And those two professionals work incredibly closely with our students and our teachers to make sure these programs are rolled out in a way that really works for our students. So moving on to our learning model for this next year. Essentially what we're emphasizing this year is, with a combination of our COVID mitigation measures, is having our students in person in a safe manner as much as possible for the entire year. We were super lucky last year that we only had a few weeks of distance learning, and then almost all students had the entire year to be in person, and we're aiming for that as well. And obviously, as I said off the top, and as Earl talked about with the medical HUI, as the year progresses, as numbers change, as scientific knowledge changes, we will keep adapting. But our model is really to be in person, to have our students have individualized pathways. And what does that mean is that we look at every student as an individual. So while we have set routes through, there's certain requirements of our programs, we consider every student as an individual. One example of that, maybe cuts both ways a little bit, is the way we do our high school schedule. So Melissa Handy, who is graciously running this meeting, and team of people, but mostly Melissa, she takes the needs of every single one of our students, their scheduling needs, the needs of our teachers, and feedback we get from parents, and just any other feedback, and we redesign, not from scratch, but we rejig our schedule every single year to maximize what will be best for our students. It would be easy just to have the exact same schedule every year, year after year, not make any changes. The reason we make changes, the reason we seek to improve is this idea of constant improvement. I told the high school faculty a business management technique, I actually teach business management, is this idea of Kaizen, or constant improvement. It comes from Japan. And so that's what we do with our schedule and with our learning models. We take what worked in previous years, and we get rid of the stuff that didn't work, and we just keep hopefully getting better and better. So moving on to our impact programs. So this is another area where we've taken feedback and made some changes. So one thing parents and students noticed on the schedule this year, something that wasn't explained in any great detail yet, but will be explained to students and to you guys now, is something called the B block, or the building block. A little play on words there. So essentially this is a period during the day. It's twice in 1 week after lunch, and then 3 times the next week on B Fridays. It's a time for essentially our entire high school to be available at the same time. So during that time, we will either be doing grade level work. So in this next few weeks, for example, freshmen will be working on transition to high school. Our sophomores will be working with Rachel on their personal project, and our juniors and seniors will be working either on introduction to the diploma program or getting ready for college applications. As the year moves on, this building block, the B block, will transition to give time for students to work on, to have access to our elective classes, and also a time for us to have, when we can do it, in-person high school assemblies or town halls. This change, again, was based on feedback both from students and parents and from teachers. And so a change we had made the year before was introducing something called the impact block. So we're keeping those. Essentially, those are what we would have called study halls when we went to high school, but they're much more it's an improved study hall essentially, so giving the student what that particular student needs. So if they need more support with a particular area, they can go get that from a teacher, or if they just need time to do homework or even work out or go into the forest with supervision, they're able to do that. So the feedback we got was essentially for our lower grades, for grades 9 and 10, there was maybe too much of that impact block, there was too much free time. So we're not ramping it down in terms of in a punitive way, but more just providing a little bit more structure with that B block period. As the year goes on and the needs of each grade and each student change, we'll obviously modify that as well. And all of this really goes with that quote there, that the value of our entire program, our entire high school, is one way to measure it is how impactful our students can be after they're done with our high school. And by giving students this kind of individualized support, I think that's the best way we can do that. Some of our students are ready to just go on day one. Other students need academic support or peer support or time to be with their friends. And I think these changes will help us do that. Our impact, our I-term, another part of our impact program, will be after Christmas this year, back in January. We did it due to COVID last year, at the very end of the year. That was, I think, hugely successful in terms of the results that we got, and I'm glad that we moved it in the end. But we are moving it back to that January, right after winter break, in order just based on feedback. So, all right, so Melissa, now you can move on to the next slide. Thank you so much. So in terms of clubs and activities, or HUIs, and also academies, essentially something I can say now about all of this is that what we will do is build on success from last year and keep on building on that success with innovation. And in other words, we will do all of this that we can do in a safe way, in an innovative way. Starting with our camps and trips, freshman camp is traditionally on the very first few days of the year, which it is again this year on Thursday. So freshmen will have freshman camp. We did make a change to change it from an overnight camp to just a long day, an all-day camp. So that isn't to say that we're not going to be doing overnight camps this year for other grade levels, but rather we want to really make sure our protocols for that kind of camp are really solid. And we just didn't want to rush that with our freshmen. So freshmen will have camp on Thursday, an all-day camp. Dances and other activities, again, I think we were hugely successful last year. We will do as is possible throughout the year. So prom last year looked a little different than normal prom. It wasn't in the big hotel down in Waikiki. It was in the lower school loop. It was beautiful. Students got all dressed up. They had a wonderful dinner. And there was even a tiny bit of safe distance dancing, and it was just wonderful. And so that idea of taking something that happened in the past and modifying it for what the reality on the ground is what we're looking at. Similarly with Spirit Week and any kinds of activities will be looked through that lens. What is the value of it to the students? What is the value to our community? What's available in terms of COVID mitigation? And we'll run through all of that. So clubs, HUIs, and academies. So we have 2 designated times a week for those. There was a question I saw already. Those are essentially mandatory. During that time, freshmen, sophomores, and juniors all need to be in one of those. And what's the difference between a club, a HUI, and an academy? I heard Christina Ho describe it today beautifully. She said, imagine you were interested in chess. So you're a student and you're interested in chess. So you can start a chess club, and that would essentially just be, let's play some chess during these club blocks. And that's easy, simple. We had that when we were in high school. A HUI is a group of people interested in something that also want to bring in an element of service. And so they would work with Christina Ho, our Dean of Experiential Education, to do that in a safe and appropriate way. And for that chess group, maybe instead of just playing chess, they're going to go down to the first grade and teach the first graders how to play chess. And then an Impact Academy, that's essentially taking that idea and going out into the community. So instead of just doing chess with the first graders, maybe this group decides to work with Christina and find a local community home, for example, and go and play chess with them and sort of bring that enrichment to our community. And again, we have the resources for this. Christina is just outstanding at making those connections to the outside of our community. But yeah, so, and then just return to the question, they are essentially mandatory. The only people who could be excused from that would be seniors, and that would be on sort of an as needed basis if they were, if they needed to catch up academically or with application to college. All right, moving on to athletics. So if you were in Earl's presentation just now, you might have heard this, but I will read a little bit of this just to make sure people hear. So the current ILH return to play guidelines are effective right now. And how do they affect us? Well, the first important thing to know is for high contact sports, so cheer or polo, and we have some students in all of those. If you're going to compete, you have to have evidence of either your student being vaccinated or a negative PCR anti-COVID test before each and every contest, so every time they play. So obtaining this test and associated costs would be the responsibility of the student athlete and their family, and those test results would be sent to the school nurse. I see Jana is here if there's specific questions about that, but again, that's for high contact sports and for games, so not for practices. The other change for this year, I think a positive change, is we will be able to, at least the start of the year, allow spectators on campus, not for practices, spectators on campus for games. And anyone who's spectating would need to self-screen, mask, and physically distance. Athletes will be allowed 2 spectators per game. Live streaming is not going to be offered in the same way as it was last year. And then I think importantly as well, this is a thing that will be subject to modification, either loosening of restrictions if possible, or tightening, or even ending if it doesn't work out. John, I see that you're there. Do you have anything to add to athletics?
No, I think you covered it. The protocols and procedures are changing rapidly. Of course, they have to do with rising case numbers and the more we understand about the Delta variant. So the league is trying to react accordingly. You probably have heard in the most recent news that the OIA the Department of Education has pushed back their start date. And ILH has made a decision to not adjust our start date because the Department of Education is allowing for students to become vaccinated because they're mandating it across the board. That's on the Department of Education side, the public school side. And so all eyes are on the Interscholastic League of Honolulu, that's us, the private school side. And as of right now, we are sticking strong to our start date. And as Alex mentioned, it's those high-risk sports where you either need to be vaccinated or provide a negative COVID test within 24 hours of every single contest. So I think you covered it pretty well. Just I thank you for your cooperation and your flexibility, as I'm sure changes will continue to bombard us pretty rapidly here.
Thank you so much, Jana. So yeah, so that will be the name of the game this year. Just we'll move through it together. Moving on to communication. There's lots of different ways communication will be sent out, or that you can communicate. And sorry, Melissa, if you wanted to move to the next slide. You had a second. Thank you. Lots of different ways to get information. So the parent portal, there's a link there. If you don't have access to it, it comes out in the newsletter as well. That has access to a document that doesn't change very often. It's the handbook, lists of textbook and supplies. While I have the word textbook in my mind, as schedules just came out so recently, no need to stress if your student doesn't have their textbook for day one. That's totally understandable. Teachers will make sure that no one's missing out. Just make sure we'll get those ordered as soon as you can. There's also the bring your own device policy. which if people have questions about, Melissa is here and can talk about, but essentially that's the policy in terms of what kind of computers you can bring to school. The student parking application, I think the students know where that is because they rush up to campus to make sure they get those turned in, calendars and Spirit Store. The LJA Weekly, we put a lot of effort, and I say we, I mean mostly Stacy Serena, our wonderful high school admin assistant. She puts a ton of work every week into that. It's designed to be both fulsome and quick reading, so you can scroll through some of the text if you need to and just see the highlights, but I would highly recommend reading it. We often get emails from parents and the answers were in the newsletters, and that's obviously okay, but most answers tend to be in there. In terms of social media, there's the school's official Facebook and Instagram accounts. And I also, my personal darling is the high school Instagram account, LJA High School Updates. I think lots of parents on this already follow that, and many of our students, most of our students do follow it. I do quite regular updates on sort of day-to-day things and bigger things. And there is a request to add a Snapchat, so I'll keep people informed if I venture into that as well. There's the website there for Project Grad. Project Grad team works all year to make Project Grad happen, and many of you have been involved in that or will be involved in it. And they're always looking for more help, even if you don't have a senior yet. Sort of the way that it works is you get involved in the years leading up to your own students' graduation, then you're involved that year sort of in a bigger way when possible. In terms of communicating back with us, obviously email or phone calls are important. What I've said to our faculty is that they should be reaching out to families via phone or email in general near the start of the year. But super important this year, a thing that we're going to be working on, making sure we keep doing, most of our teachers do it, but is maybe growth area in some cases is just making sure if there are any academic or other issues that we're sharing those with parents as soon as we can. Moving on to our daily schedule and procedures. So the day actually starts at 8, not 8:05, so 5 minutes earlier, and goes through 3:25 every day except Wednesdays. Students in general shouldn't be on campus before 7. There's not really many people here. And then after 3:25, there isn't sort of formal supervision, but there are obviously a lot of people on campus still. And there are activities that are happening after school. Here's an area that if everyone can turn their ears on and listen to carefully. In terms of drop off and pick up, something that would be hugely helpful. And by the end of the year, last year, our parents totally got it. So as you pull into the high school, you pass all the gravel parking stalls and follow the traffic in. You go around the loop, the basketball loop, and then if there's no one in front of you and you're dropping off, you're going to keep on driving all the way to the big mural, almost where you're heading back out again. And the reason you do that is so that people coming in behind you have space as well. So that's for drop off in the morning. So even if your son or daughter has their locker further back, if you can just pull all the way forward, that would really help because traffic jams can sort of happen really quickly. And then in terms of pick up, we end up changing the flow of traffic slightly. We have 2 lanes leaving. Once you've done that loop around, there's 2 lanes leaving and just 1 lane coming in. But again, importantly, if you can just keep moving forward as the cars in front of you leave, that would be great. And everyone around you would greatly appreciate that. Moving on to school pass. So I might have Melissa chime in a moment on sort of the technical piece, but just in terms of why we do this, why it's important, and how we're going to work with students on this. So this is a little different than the other divisions in that we have students in charge of screening daily. So they need to make sure they are answering the questions honestly, that they're taking their temperature, and that they're doing it every day. It was a challenge at times. We worked closely with those students that it was a challenge for, but it is a serious issue. It's important for our community that everyone's doing it. I do it every day. I make sure my own kids who are in lower school are doing it every day. But for our high school students, it's incredibly important, and there can be behavioral consequences if students are not doing it. So it remains an important thing that we do. So with your own students, definitely let them know that it's serious. It's an important thing. It's the reason one of the main reasons we get to stay open essentially is that we have pretty good compliance with this. So we know who's on campus and we can track if there's problems. And Melissa, did you wanted to add about in terms of downloading and stuff?
Yeah, so the students will just install an app on their cell phone. And if your child doesn't have a cell phone, that's okay, because they all have a device. And they can just use there's a link that we provide for them to log into through a web browser. Either way, whether they have a Mac or an Apple iPhone, or they have an Android phone, or they're just using their laptop, they're going to log in with their school email address. So it's just a sign in with Google, and it gets them right in there, and then they can do their self-screening. Mr. Ramsig was correct. It's really important. And I spend a significant amount of time in the morning identifying the list of names of people who were not screened. And Stacy Serena, who we love in the high school office, winds up spending her time running around. She's getting a lot of steps on her pedometer to run around and find the few students who don't do the screening. And as Mr. Ramsig said, when we have repeat offenders, we really want to address that as a behavioral issue and help them to learn how to to work with COCUA for our community. When kids have trouble, they all know where to find me, and our high school kids are not afraid to come and talk to me about needing help getting access to their app. So there should never be more than a day or two that goes by where they say their app's not working. They should come right to me and we'll solve it the same day. And essentially, what you can do as your part as parents is just to think about how much you appreciate Stacy Serena in the high school office and how many nice things that she'll do for you all year. And then just ask your child to please take this seriously, because it does help her significantly if each child does their screening responsibly. And like he said, most of them do. It's just a few that we have to chase down, but those few really get Stacy out on the run. So
well, I have a goal to get us better at that this year. I think I have high expectations. Moving on to our sick policy. So in general, if your child is sick, just non-COVID related, is regular old sick, please keep them home, and they should be symptom-free with no medication for 24 hours. So that's just a cold or regular sickness. If there are COVID symptoms, so they're listed here, it's kind of hard to read, at least on my screen, but 104.4 or higher fever, vomiting, diarrhea, cough, difficulty breathing, sore throat, a new onset headache, they must also stay home. And in this instance, please contact the school nurse and or your pediatrician or doctor. So if they have any of those are obviously indicators it could be COVID related. And then similarly, if anyone in your household has been exposed to or test positive for COVID, please let our school nurse know immediately, so that we can work with you on what we need you to do, what kind of quarantining or not. So that is your first step. Moving on to relatedly, Community COCUA. Just as Melissa mentioned, all of these protocols, everything that we're doing, they only really work with this Hawaiian idea of COCUA, of working together, of helping others for the sake of helping others. Again, we were hugely successful last year with, I think Earl said, we only had 3 cases on campus. We had no community spread on campus. I think the vast majority of that, 90% of that, was because of the hard work of our families and our teachers and our cleaning staff. 10% obviously is just a little bit of luck. And I think we can just keep that going, what has been referred to as the Swiss cheese approach, is lots and lots of layers of protection, whether it's self-screening, vaccination, people following our travel policy. And the most important thing I heard again and again is just please report any confirmed cases or exposure to the school nurse. Do it early, do it if you don't think maybe you need to, just better safe than sorry. Campus safety, I sort of mentioned some of these things. Many of our protocols are the same. Earl and his medical, these are experts, frontline healthcare workers, hospitalists, internationally known virologists are all in this group. They'll volunteer their time and work with Earl to make these policies. So they made some slight modifications, but some big things to know there, that we're continuing with some of our outdoor learning spaces. So students will be outdoors often. We have blower fans to minimize the amount of time AC is used in classes. And just continuing with our cleaning, our AC filters were all cleaned this summer, so those are in tip-top shape. And then the cleaners, our professional cleaners, use both HEPA vacuums and electrostatic sprayers, which I guess are the top of the line for cleaning that way. All right, our response levels, and I would encourage anyone who is really looking for an in-depth look at this to go back and listen to, if you didn't see it, Earl's presentation. But essentially, it's a similar situation to last year. We have different response levels based on a number of different indicators. We're currently at LJA response level 2. So that's the highest level of response, or the highest risk before we moved to the potential of everyone going to distance learning. I think the reality of our situation is no one can predict where we're going to go, but I have every hope, every expectation that actually we will probably be moving down levels before we move up again. But that's obviously just just speculation. In terms of the high school approach, importantly at level 2, where we're at now, students are masked essentially all the time, indoors and outdoors. The only exception is when they're eating lunch. And obviously their students spend time outside of class, unmasked at each other's houses and that kind of thing. But the good news is we have a very high and I think quickly rising vaccination level in the high school. I don't want to say the exact percentage, maybe Melissa can tell me, but it's quickly rising, which obviously doesn't guarantee that a vaccinated student can't transfer, but the evidence seems to suggest decreases greatly their ability to do that. That's spreading and certainly makes a sickness less if they get it. So I think we're in a really good place. If your student's not vaccinated yet, please do so. What Earl said, and again, I don't want to step on his line, but it's the thinking is once the FDA approves and the medical WHO confirms again that we would eventually move to a mandatory vaccination for students, but we're not there quite yet. Moving on to our travel policy. So this is a slight change. So first thing, not a change, the same as last year. Any travel, off-island travel, needs to be registered both with me for the high school or other divisional principals and the school nurse. So probably for most of you, the next big travel time would be October break. So we'll be keeping records of everyone traveling off-island. In terms of returning to campus after travel, an unvaccinated student, so that's number 2 there, can provide a negative pre-travel test, and then following the state's procedures, re-entering, essentially they can come back to school after 3 to 5 days of returning to Oahu without anything else if they have that second negative test when they arrive in Oahu. So that's for an unvaccinated student. For our fully vaccinated students, they can return right away to campus after they get those results as well. So, and then Courtney Chow says 73% of our grades 9 through 12 are fully vaccinated. And that number might even be higher if students haven't turned their forms in yet, but please, if you haven't done it yet, consider doing that. Moving on to our second last slide, health updates. This is just essentially a plug for additional updates. Is the health updates. If you can move to the next slide, sorry, Melissa. This is the health updates on the Le Jardin website. Much more details there, and our entire COVID protocol policy is written out there. And then our final slide, upcoming events before we get to questions, just upcoming events. So first day of school, is not tomorrow, but Wednesday. Tomorrow is new to LJA, and we're having a on-campus event. So this isn't new to the high school, but new to LJA from 10 until noon. So new students and their parents can come to school tomorrow to meet the teachers, and then everyone's back on campus on Wednesday. You can see some holidays and the picture day. And then importantly, we haven't set a date yet. We were waiting on whether or not we would be able to do it in person or virtually. It's looking like we'll be doing it virtually, but we'll be doing, it's also called the back to school night, which I think this night was called, but the back to school night for parents. And we'll do 2 different nights, an MYP night for the high school and a DP night for the high school, where parents can get a chance to hear about subject areas and get to know the teachers a little bit more. We'll also obviously make our teachers available if you have questions for them or just want to meet them virtually. All of our teachers would be more than willing to do that. All right, so our last page is the contact page. There's my contact information there. Lindsay Schiffler, our Dean of Academics. I apologize, Rachel, I should have had your information there as well. But if you have an MYP question, just send it to me and I'll make sure Rachel gets it. And then Stacy Serena, she is a good first step for all questions related to the high school. All right, so do we have questions, Melissa?
We had some questions that I answered, but I'll bring them up for the benefit of everyone. Oh, there's some excitement about the Polynesian Club. Are clubs optional?
So I think I a little bit addressed that, but essentially, no, they're not optional. Everyone needs to be in a club or a HUI or an Impact Academy, with the exception that some of our seniors might be given dispensation in terms of getting work done, their extended essay or college work.
Super. And then someone wanted the calendar, so I moved back to the calendar. Can students participate in multiple activities or HUIs?
Yes, I think the answer to that is similar to whether they can participate in multiple sports. You can definitely participate in more than one if it's possible to, based on what the requirements of that group are. So let's say you wanted to do Wild Kids, which is an Impact Academy. It's pretty demanding in terms of time. You probably would, that would be the one club you do because they meet every time there's clubs. But if you wanted to be in 2 clubs, say chess club, which I don't think we actually have, but just two clubs, you could probably do both. So it would just be a matter of talking with the people involved and seeing, is it possible? Just like with sports, you can be a multi-sport athlete if it's possible with practice and game schedules.
Is tomorrow's Meet the Teacher Day only for new students?
Yes, so to be clear, new students to Le Jardin, so not new to the high school. So while we would love to have all the freshman parents and students on campus, we decided to just do new to LJA. So I think there's 30 or 40 new high school students and their families.
Okay, could you elaborate on electives during B block?
So as I said, the start of the year, our electives aren't starting for a few weeks. We'll be doing grade level activities. Then I see a question there about the scheduling of electives. We'll then put out a course offerings essentially for the electives, and students can elect to sign up for them. For grades 9 and 10, if they choose not to do an elective during that B block time, they'll be in a structured study hall to just get work done, so they won't sort of just be wandering around. Not that they were doing that last year, but we want to encourage them into those electives.
Okay, has a learning support coordinator been hired?
Not yet, but we are actively interviewing, and Vicki McNeil, our Dean of Students, actually has an interview with a super qualified person tomorrow. We do still have Ashin and Michaela, who are not learning support specialists, but were hugely impactful last year with our students, and they're here. And then Lindsay Schiffler, our Dean of Academics in the high school, and Rachel sort of doing double duty there with Vicki, are making sure that our learning support students are fully supported. Another change I'll just mention while we're talking about that, we're moving towards a tiered system with academic support. 3 different tiers. Tier 1 is essentially students that are don't need any additional academic support right now. A tier 2 student might have something temporary going on, or maybe just extra support in 1 or 2 particular classes. And then a tier 3 student would be a student with documented medical or learning difference. So what we used to call like learning support students, or we still do sometimes, or a student with a learning need. And so those are level 3 students. And essentially what that tiering system does is allow us to put our resources towards the students who need them the most, while still making sure everyone's being served well. So we have now, and I say we, I wasn't involved in it, but Vicky, Lindsay, and Christina met, and all the students have been sort of placed temporarily, at least on that scale, to make sure they're getting that support they need.
Yeah, and I think it's something that you didn't mention, Alex, but I think it's really something spectacular is these systems that they started putting in place last year to support students, all students, but also our learning support students. We think have been quite impactful. In fact, our 12th grade graduating diploma program students last year, 100% of our learning support students got the full diploma. I think that's an amazing statistic.
Yeah, I should have mentioned that. I'm glad you did that. I know everyone's super proud of that, and those students were just over the moon. They worked hard and earned it.
Yeah, we're super proud of them. Let's switch to French Honor Society. Is this a club, a HUI, or an academy? How will students learn about all those details?
So they will learn about all those details through Christina. We'll have an all-school town hall, and they'll learn about those. I think an honor society is a HUI because it has requirements for them to do service, and French Honor Society has some service requirements. But I think, and your question, I don't think the French Honor Society meets that often. So definitely John would be able to do other clubs in addition to that. That's more of sort of a recognition of work with the occasional meeting rather than a meeting twice a week all year kind of thing.
Right. And I think there's very few that are academies. Robotics is an academy. And the requirement to be an academy, there's a huge amount of community service that's required. So
yeah.
Okay, question about, I just wanted to mention Rachel will be offering, our MYP coordinator will be offering a personal project and writing lab during the B block elective. So that's spectacular. Back to the learning support program. How will parents know if their children have been placed in a learning support tier? Yeah,
so we were just talking about that today. Essentially, you would likely know because you had been working with us already because something had happened. So if your student has no learning support needs and all of a sudden there's something that's happened or a big change, you probably would know. But if not, anytime a student moved between one of the tiers, we'd be communicating with you. So if a student who had just been moving along with just sort of no issues, all of a sudden has big issues, then we would be bringing the parents involved and as part of the team and making sure you guys understand what supports we're providing and what you can do at home and that kind of thing. So it's not some sort of secret number that no one gets to know.
Yeah. And then, sorry, we're ping-ponging back and forth because parents have questions about the things we're talking about. Electives. For the electives, when will they get to choose and how will they find out about the electives?
So they'll choose in a few weeks after the course catalog has been put together, and then they will find out when we'll do a Google form and they'll know that yes, you were able to do that. And Anne asked, so for performance band, we did have 2 different performance band teachers hired over the summer. Unfortunately, both of them were unable to move to the island after all things sort of said and done, which we were disappointed about. But we have a very exciting fledgling program that I think, Anne, I mentioned to you. So we're going to make sure that any student who's interested in band gets tutoring, that's not the right word, like lessons from Hawaii Youth Symphony Orchestra. At Le Jardin's going to pay for that so that they can keep up while we're waiting. So we're actively interviewing, we're actively looking. So hopefully it won't be a long-term problem, but in the interim, we want to make sure students are still getting to practice their instruments. And yes, it happens during block B block.
Super. And there was a question that Anne, you had up here about, sorry, I'm trying to find it. Explaining the new cases metric, wanting to know if the new cases metric refers to Kailua, Oahu, or statewide. And I put that to Courtney Chow. She's going to find out the answer to that.
Yeah,
I don't think there.
Oh, sorry. We do believe that it's the Hawaii state metric, the same metric that Lieutenant Governor Josh Green is reporting on is correct, but I will double check and follow up with you.
Super.
Thank you, Courtney.
I don't see any other questions at this point. Maybe people are tired because they've been on here for
hour number 4. Does anyone on here do all 4 hours other than
well,
staff?
me.
Me.
Yeah, we've got a couple in here.
Well, we won't shut off just yet, but I want to thank everyone. Oh, you're on, so they did 3. Thank everyone for being here. Thank everyone for being part of our community. And again, if you have questions, you have concerns, you want to learn more, definitely please feel free to reach out. Email, phone is fine. Come in. We can do a Zoom meeting. We can. I want to make sure everyone feels supported and understands what's going on.
And Alex, can I make a quick plug for some of the sessions that we have for parents coming up?
Yes. Do you want to talk about robotics again too?
No, we're gonna have a robotics meeting. No, I'm just kidding. No, we have two sessions in the works. I'm planning another live streaming of Screenagers next chapter. So that would be it's all about devices and balance and helping students manage their anxiety. You know, and how sometimes the devices they're using them late at night keep you up at night, and some of the impact of that kind of device use sometimes looks like clinical depression. And so it's a really spectacular documentary that was put together by a doctor who also did the earlier documentary that's just called Screenagers. So we're gonna be hosting that sometime in the fall, and we really want as many of you to attend as possible. It's a great way to understand how to set some boundaries and how to talk to your kids about devices, and you'll learn a lot actually about yourself. The other thing that we'll be doing is Lindsay Schiffler and I do a series. It's for DP parents, but even sometimes we get 9th and 10th grade parents who are interested in attending, and these will also be via Zoom. And they're all about getting to know the diploma program. And for those of you who have 11th graders or 12th grade diploma program students, it's great because we go into a lot of detail about assessments and the different components of the DP. And it really helps parents to know how to best support their kids. So those are 2 parent sessions that are up and coming. And I'm sure more parent, kinds of events like this will be announced. And where we announce these is in the LJA Weekly. So please look for that LJA Weekly on Thursdays and sign up for these sessions. And if you've already attended, come again. You could always learn more.
And I see there's 2 questions I can do fairly quickly. So first from Laura Wilcox about high school cell phone policy. So the policy in the high school is a little more subtle, I think, per grade level. So the middle school one is very clear based on the age group. But so for high school, what I say is essentially starting in 9th grade, we're really working with the students on learning how to use their cell phones as learning tools, use their cell phones appropriately. We just talked about this at a faculty meeting. Every class will have slightly different rules, and teachers have been instructed to be really clear. Some classes, cell phones are needed. They're used every day as learning tools. Other classes, categorically, you can't have them. So Jimmy Charos's PE class, they can't have them when they're doing PE. They leave them when they enter the class. Whereas Amy Manso's art class, they're allowed to listen to music while they're doing their art. And so they learn how to hopefully use that appropriately during the class, just like all of us have to in our professional lives. But in terms of if it becomes a problem, then it potentially moves into a behavioral issue. So if it was used for sort of a bullying situation, or a student was having trouble using it appropriately in general, then we would work with that student individually and their family, obviously. But as a general rule, what we'd like students to leave high school with is some skills around cell phones, even though it's obviously, as we all know, it is a difficult and a complicated tool to use. And then Anna asked about college counseling for sophomores. So right off the bat end, sophomores will be in the next few weeks getting to see their transcript. That was a thing that's normally done at the end of freshman year, and we didn't end up doing it this past year, so we're going to do it early in the year. So every student will get their transcript, learn about it. Scott tells me there will be a few on-campus college visits this year. Still just a few. Colleges are just hesitantly going back into that, and probably that's going to depend on how numbers go. So first priority will go to our sophomores and our juniors and seniors, obviously, but if there was a college that a sophomore was super interested in seeing, they could work with Scott on that. That isn't an expectation. Obviously, Scott's always available to meet with sophomores or their families. He's had freshmen or even middle schoolers sometimes come in to meet. And then by the end of the year, we're getting ready for their junior year, and they start really ramping up. And Scott's just typed in the chat there that 10th graders are also given access to our wonderful program. It's not ours, the one we subscribe to, called SCOIR, SCOIR. It's an app. It's really intuitive for the students, and they can check out every college in the US essentially. Also, there's all sorts of data about where LJA students have gone and that kind of thing. So students can get super involved, and definitely just feel free to stop by and chat with Scott if you have questions or if John has questions. All right. Unless there are any more burning questions.
I don't see any new questions. I felt like it was appropriate to put this picture up since they're talking about college.
That's I should have mentioned that earlier. I'm proud of every graduating class, but this past year's graduating class was particularly wonderful, and are off at some awesome colleges. Perfect for them as humans. So I'm very proud of them, and proud of Scott and all the teachers who helped them get there.
All right, it seems like we're going to call it a night a few minutes early.
All right, so again, if you have other questions, please feel free to reach out, and I will see you all soon.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Bye, everybody.